Thank you very much. Actually, I'm no longer the director. Little correction. Uh, sorry. I'm not going to be speaking about e-governance because I'm not really equipped to speak about e-governance. My field is essentially urban design, and I think in the morning, if you're here, there were many presentations which highlighted this particular aspect. But what I'm going to speak about is urban concerns, basically, of my experience of having studied and being able to study several cities in India from the perspective of primarily looking at their environments and to a certain extent being able to judge the quality of life within those particular institutions. Now, if you look that over the past year, particularly the past 2 or 3 years, cities have come center stage, and you look at the number of seminars and conferences that have taken place in India, particularly in India, with regard to sustainability and cities. In fact, it's enormous. I don't know whether the interest in this particular subject or field arises out of the fact that the major GDP that is generated in this country is from urban areas, or whether we have moved from a largely manufacturing and rural economy and are moving towards a service economy, which is then based in cities. But for whatever reason, cities seem to come center stage. But within that, there has also been this very great concern that cities are not what people expect them to be. If you go around the country, the plight of most municipalities, I was pleased to learn that the NDMC has such a large surplus of funds. I'm aware of the funds that the DDA has, but very few urban local bodies and municipalities can be proud of assets that they have. The assets that were built up over many years have virtually been eroded. Most municipalities find it very difficult to keep their head above water. And I think there were a very large number of suggestions today, particularly with reference to e-governance, as to how those assets can be used in a proper manner, how taxes can be generated. So within that framework, I think one of the problems has been the complete erosion of assets, and also the fact that assets have not even been able to be maintained properly. If you take cities like Mumbai, even Delhi, the amount of properties that each of these municipalities actually own has been a legacy. But if you look at what they've built over the last 20 years, it's been negligible. From being, centers of very important parts in local government, we have come down to a stage where we don't seem to matter anymore. Now, I think one of the problems has been, as rightly pointed out, has been what is the method of collection of revenues and taxes and so on and so forth. But also similarly, I think there is also this whole issue of the whole spectrum of what a municipality or urban local body is capable of collecting in terms of revenues, and what in terms of revenues that it shares. Like, for example, very simply speaking, if you take the amount that the city of Mumbai contributes to the GDP of this country, and what does it get back from the union government in terms of city, in terms of funds for the city? Negligible. And there will be, the many stories which will go around in a similar manner. So there is this whole business of revenue generation and revenue sharing. The areas are kind of limited, and we can't, we can only expand to a particular area. So the point that I'm coming to is that IT within this whole gamut or this game is really an enabler. And I think we've had several very good ideas about how IT can be used in a much more effective way in order to generate revenues, ensure proper governance. But what's the bigger issue here is that, how do you increase the so-called revenue sharing mode, and what is the liability that the government has? Now, if you take Delhi as an example, it's not a good example, because Delhi essentially is a city-state. So are other union territories. We cannot use these as proper examples. You have to take the governance in a state and see how cities can be put back, or cities can be governed in a proper way. And that, I think we'll have to look at a paradigm shift. On the one hand, we are talking about various inputs and various liabilities and various schemes that go into development and upkeep of cities and development schemes and so on and so forth. They come from a whole variety of ministries, a whole variety of different parts of the government, from the UNDP, from different sources. But at the end of the day, who's accountable for all that? Over the years, what has happened, I think, is that the bureaucracy within the municipal systems have taken charge. In some city, you know, the city of Delhi has a mayor who's, I think, replaced every 1.5 years or 2 years. We have a chief minister who doesn't even know that the secretaries of our departments are going to get changed by the central government. We have a chief minister of the state to whom the police does not report. So who is accountable in the whole system? The chief minister of Maharashtra is responsible for the city of Mumbai and the whole state of Maharashtra. The large amount of people who come, who are responsible for the city of Mumbai, are actually MLAs who have no stake in the city. Right? Even if you take any capital city within our country, how many of those MLAs who really take decisions on the cities and the implications of what happens within the cities really belong to that city? So similarly, if you have to look down from a bottom-up structure, then obviously there has to be much more importance given to local governance, and that can only become effective through a paradigm shift. You'll be surprised that there are countries in Latin America who've already done that 10 years ago, and the changes in their urban areas are unbelievable, for the simple reason that there is somebody who has stake in that city. Very often it's the mayor, and the mayor is generally an elected person, and not necessarily, I mean, there are various systems, but then at the end of the day, somebody at the helm has to take charge and has to have a vision for a particular city. Without that vision, you're not going to be able to either take the city forward or to outline certain areas in which the city should develop. I mean, we are talking at a stage where urban services have come to such an extent or such a level where 40–50% of the urban population does not benefit from the city except for the fact that they get a job. And that is the enabler, that they get more money than they would have got anywhere else. And that enables them to a better livelihood than wherever they had their previous livelihood from. But if you take the citizen and you take the way that the city is going to move, unless somebody takes charge and that person is held accountable, that means if that person does not perform, then he's accountable to what decisions that person had taken. The commissioner of a municipality gets transferred after 4 years. He doesn't care. If he's there, he wants to make a name or move on in life. I'm sorry, there are commissioners also who do excellent jobs and carry on. But there are also equal number of commissioners of municipalities. And why should the commissioner be the person who's been at the helm of the affair? It should be really the political person, somebody that we elect, that so that we as a citizen of a city can go to this person, we have a problem, and say, look, you guys have got to perform. If you don't perform, you go. If you work in New York City, your taxes go to the government of New York, to the city of New York. But you work in Delhi, your taxes go to the central government. Or you work in Mumbai, it goes to the central government. How much of that money goes back into Mumbai city? You have no control over. So I think I'm raising some issues which I think we need not only revenue sharing, we need a greater accountability, we need a whole paradigm shift in terms of city governance, and without the focus of what we want to do to our urban areas, all the figures that the McKinsey report and several reports that they give you is going to be a frightening figure. For the simple reason that the numbers are enormous, the accountability is very little, and the fate of the country, if your major GDP is going to be generated from cities, and you're expecting cities to be areas which become already are engines of growth and are going to be future engines of growth, then we are in a very dismal situation. We need to completely look at the entire urban scenario, review it, and see that how can we put more accountability and put more power in the hands of people who ordinary citizens elect. So this is just to think about it. These are some very personal realizations that I've come to, that unless this paradigm shift comes about, it's going to be very, very difficult to try and manage our urban areas. Thank you very much.